With us now is Ann Costa, and she is going to talk to us today about devotion to the Sacred Heart. Ann, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you again.
You know, of course, we spoke with you previously about your book you wrote on the Sacred Heart, but there used to be a very, very strong group called the Apostolate of Prayer, and its main goal was to promote devotion to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And, you know, there used to be thousands of these. Every parish had one. They were all over the place, but these have seemed to have kind of fallen away a little bit. But I'm glad to hear there's still one at your place.
Well, yes, there's actually groups all across the country, actually the world, who continue to promote the Sacred Heart devotion, and in particular enthronements to the Sacred Heart, that Jesus would be enthroned in homes or businesses with a ceremony that is very solemn and not too complicated, but a very beautiful way that we enthrone Christ in the midst of our daily life in our homes. And it really is a good way for the family to be united again, to really go back to the way where it's really about creating the domestic church. And there's enthronement networks and people that are called missionaries of the Sacred Heart who promote and help families to go through and prepare for the enthronement process.
Now, do you have a pretty big group where you live?
Well, we do. We have a small group where I live right now. The Sacred Heart Apostolate was founded by a woman by the name of Gloria Anson, who passed away in 2017, and she really devoted her whole life from when she had her home enthroned back in the mid-70s, and really went all over the world to, help families, in particular through parish missions. They do parish missions. They go into your parish, help you identify folks that will do enthronements, in your home. And it's a lay movement. It's a lay apostolate, really, that has now relocated. The Sacred Heart is a global effort now, and it's been relocated to the Diocese of Knoxville, Tennessee. And that's that's a growing group. And then there's others, right? Actually, there's a group really close to you in Columbus called Sacred Heart Columbus. And they have missionaries, and they go in people's homes, and it's a 3 or a 7 day prep, depending on which group you go with, and it's just a very, very beautiful way to put Jesus at the center of our lives.
And one of the things, Cincinnati still has a group called the Men of the Sacred Heart, but the difficulty is that the majority of the members are elderly, and because of that, they tend to have some problems with their health, and they're not able to go through. How are you recruiting young people? Because the secret, I think, is to try to recruit some younger families and younger men and women into this.
I think that's why the missions in the parishes are so important. We kind of looked at it, and we used to do 4 or 5 day missions, but now they're shorter. They're like 3 or even a 1 day mission in a parish. And this attracts young families who want to bring their children up in the faith and, want to have the daily Catholic practices in their homes. And they are the ones who, in turn, are becoming part of the apostolates now. So that is how we're doing it, through missions in churches, and usually, like I said, it's young families. It's all about family prayer. It's about instituting family devotions, creating that domestic church, as we say, and that's how it's happening. I know the Men of the Sacred Heart, but there's also, I just heard the commercial for Emily is going to be talking on the radio in the morning through the Sacred Heart Enthronement Network. That's another way, and people can get involved on the web and learn everything that they need to, and get the materials and that sort of thing. So there are many ways to meet families right where they are to help them, because really this is like I said, it's a lay apostolate, and it's also for families. It's to try to quell the crisis in families these days.
Well, I know, Ann, my first really encounter with it was back in 1992, 93, when I was at my first assignment. I was a newly ordained priest in the pastor, had just come down from Dayton, about an hour north. He's a native Cincinnati, a native West Sider. And one of the things we did for the feast day of the Sacred Heart is we got a hold of the men of the Sacred Heart, and we had images available, very inexpensive but very pretty images of Jesus, and also the Immaculate Heart of Mary for people to purchase. And then at the Mass in honor of the Sacred Heart, we asked the people to hold those up, and we did a special blessing of those, and then we empowered them to go and enthrone the Sacred Heart in their home. And I remember it was a great success 27 years ago. Now, I don't know if it's still going on, but, in Cincinnati, we have a lot of permanent deacons, and they're looking for things to do. And I sure wish, if any of them are listening today, that you could get a hold of the director, Mark Machuga, and say, you know what? Some deacons need to take over this Men of the Sacred Heart and really begin to engage the laity because, and as we've talked about before, the world has lost its heart.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it has. And the family is losing battles every day. The battle is within the family and trying to break that up. And there's this beautiful quote from John Paul II when he was talking about building a civilization of love. He was talking directly to families and saying, you need to invite Jesus' heart. You need to have his heart in your family and, as a refuge and a place of safety, but also a source of strength for your family. So, I can't stress it enough. It is not an old-fashioned devotion, and it's not about putting a picture on the wall. It really is about a Catholic way of life that it can stem the tide of what's happening to destroy families right now.
Well, one of the things, and this is something I think we've spoken about before, oftentimes when people think of heart, they think of sentimental, they think of romanticism, but no, there's much, much more that when they say someone has heart, they have drive, they have commitment, they have passion, and that drive, commitment, and passion gives them the strength to go through challenges and to survive these and to flourish in these challenges. And that's the kind of heart we need to be talking about today.
Yes, when you're saying that, I'm thinking about his heart as a shield. It's almost even in the shape of a shield. You think about that protection, that shield. It's very strong and it's very true. And it's a source of all grace, right, and strength and virtue. And so to really contemplate, know his heart, to be devoted to his heart is almost like it's like having the rosary too. We have our weapons. We have our spiritual weapons, and his heart surely is that.
Well, yeah, and honestly, and as well as I do, the devotion to the Sacred Heart was very much affected by the French. And the French sentimental fools they are, but also by women religious. And of course, they tend to be much more affective in the love of Christ. But I think that this view that you and I are discussing, I really like. I didn't think about the image of a heart as a shield, but that is a wonderful insight. And to put that out there and to say a Catholic heart is not the heart of a weak person. A Catholic heart is the heart of the strength of Christ, the strength of the cross. That's why his heart is pierced. And it's a burning strength. That's why the flame is there, because that strength will purify, will take away sin, and will conquer evil.
Yes. And his image in our midst is the reminder of that. The reminder of who we belong to, and that we are in a battle for souls in a way. Well, we definitely are. And he is the one that leads the way for that. And so even with our own families, I know a lot of families are struggling with addictions and things that are just tearing them apart. And there are so many stories of families who have enthroned their homes, that they've dedicated their lives to to Jesus in that very concrete way, and then have seen something really miracles happen in their family about around those promises that we talked about a couple of days ago, that he does want to unite families. He wants to reconcile. He wants to bring peace in your midst. And that doesn't mean peace is everything's all perfect all the time, but it means that you are fortified no matter what happens, and your knowledge and the strength of his love is really what that means.
Well, and how has the enthronement of the image of Jesus' Sacred Heart in your house changed your family?
I'll tell you. This is a big miracle for me, okay? But these are the kinds of miracles that God is interested in. When I brought Jesus and His image into my home, I never had a formal enthronement. I'm going to say why, because my husband really wasn't on board with that, and I didn't want to, because the male, the head of the household, and if that's a male or a female, doesn't matter, because if you have a single household, you can still enthrone your home. If you are a single person, you can still enthrone Jesus in your home. But my husband really isn't on board yet. But I did put Jesus' picture right in my living room, right? And I have a very big home at the time. I had a daughter who was, I think, 18, 17, 18. She was in the house, but she wasn't really. You know how teenagers are. They're there, but they're not really there. And my husband, we had a very big home, so that he spent most of his time down in his man cave,
Yeah.
So it was just me, and it was Jesus, me staring at Jesus, right, on my main floor there.
And Jesus looking back at you.
And Jesus looking back at me, and me thinking, oh, my gosh, this is really, I'm lonely, And, I'm sitting here, and I'm almost an empty nest. I'm a mother. I love Jesus, and here I sit, night after night, kind of by myself. That image was there, and within the period of 6 months, I noticed that my husband started coming up and sitting in the room with me, right? And we would watch Jeopardy, and Wheel of Fortune together.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I noticed that over time, my daughter started to join us. My 18-year-old daughter would sit there, and so it became a family ritual that we would all sit and watch those two shows together. And I thought, that's Jesus, and Jesus did that.
That's right. It's not the rosary, but it's still pretty good.
No, and it's just like I don't even know if I knew how lonely I was. I didn't know that, but I know Jesus did. He knew that he wanted our family to spend just those couple of hours, and then it did extend. Then we started to eat meals together again, and that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal in our day. And I didn't realize I was even missing all that. But Jesus knew that He wanted to restore that in my family. And that's a beautiful thing. And I attribute it all to the devotion to the Sacred Heart and just having Him there with me. I conversed with Him. I would converse with Him. Well,
Ann, that is a wonderful story, and I think that's a very encouraging thing for our listeners to hopefully get them to work on having their house enthroned with the Sacred Heart. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, you also have a book on the Sacred Heart. Would you like to give us that title?
Sure. It's called Healing Promises, The Essential Guide to the Sacred Heart. And then if you want more information, go to sacredheartapostolate.com. And then you'll learn more about enthronements as well.
Thank you very much, Ann. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you. God bless. Bye-bye.